Hello everyone. In this lesson, we're going to get your computer ready, or in other words, we're going to set up the AI tools that you'll need in this course. Right away, the great news is that this will not cost you anything, and you don't even need to have a credit card on file. You can get started completely free. So where do we begin? Well, in front of you right now is ChatGPT. You might be familiar with this, or there's Claude, or there's Google Gemini, and these are chat features, right? Chat AI. Now you can absolutely use these tools and have them write code for you, and then whatever it gives back to you, you can just copy and paste it and use it wherever you want to. However, once you're building anything of reasonable complexity, like if you want to be a real professional web developer, your code is going to be split up into so many different files that you and we don't want to have to copy and paste code that the AI writes for us. Instead, we want the AI to be able to write code directly into our different files and edit our existing files and create and delete our files for us. So instead of just an AI chat tool, we want an agentic AI coding tool. There are many different options on the market, but my favorite by far is Visual Studio Code. It's available for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it's not created by just some random company, it's created by Microsoft. Now, regardless of how you feel about Microsoft, we can all agree that they are not just some small random company. My point there is that this is not some trendy AI app. This is a long-standing, incredibly stable application built by one of the largest companies in the world. So while there are many competing products in this agentic code editor market, Visual Studio Code, I feel like, is perhaps the most safe, or I guess you could call it the most boring or just standard choice, in my opinion. Anyways, regardless of whether you're using Windows, Mac, or Linux, go ahead and download VS Code right now. So you can pause this video lesson while you get VS Code or Visual Studio Code downloaded and installed on your computer. So you can pause the video and I'll see you in just a moment. Great. Now at this point, I'll assume that you've resumed the video and you've installed VS Code or Visual Studio Code. I'm just going to call it VS Code for the remainder of the entire course now. Now when you launch VS Code for the first time, it will look something like this. Perfect. So we have VS Code, but now we need to take another step to enable its AI features. Specifically, Copilot is what adds the AI functionality to VS Code. Copilot is also created by Microsoft. Now, in order to use Copilot, we do need a GitHub account, but the beautiful thing here is that you can create a GitHub account completely for free. So back in your web browser, open a new tab and visit the official website, which is github.com. I won't walk through the sign up process with you, but just sign up for a completely free account. At this point, decline any extra upsell offers they give you. You just want a free GitHub account. So right now your task is to pause this video lesson while you go and sign up for a completely free github.com account. Okay, so if you've resumed the video at this point, I'm going to assume that you have successfully signed up for a github.com account. Now we just want to log into our GitHub account in VS Code. That's how we turn on or enable the Copilot AI features. So back in your VS Code program, if you're still on the welcome launch screen, you can choose this button right here to set up Copilot. However, if you accidentally close the welcome screen, that's not a problem. Up towards the top of your VS Code app, you should see this icon. If you hover over it, it says toggle chat. That lets you open and close the right-hand menu. And with it open, that's also where you can log into your GitHub account to use Copilot. So for example, if you didn't want to use the setup Copilot button that was here 10 seconds ago, in this right-hand chat menu down in the bottom right corner, you can click on this icon and then click Setup Copilot. I won't walk through this exact process with you, but you're just going to use this Continue with GitHub option. It should open a pop-up or your web browser, and if you're not already logged in, just go ahead and log in with your GitHub account. And absolutely choose the free option. Copilot has a very generous free tier, or at least in my opinion, it seems very generous. You get a certain amount of free usage every month. You don't even need to have a credit card on file. And then if you go past that free limit, it's just going to say, hey, you might need to either wait until next month to continue using these AI features, or as of today, it's $10 a month for, I'm not going to call it unlimited, but you can check out their pricing page. It's $10 for a lot of usage. But in my experience, I was able to experiment with Copilot completely for free, and I found the free monthly tier very generous. So you can absolutely get started and even build your first example application using that free tier. So keep it free for now, keep it educational. Perfect. Perfect. So if you are resuming the video lesson, I will assume that you've logged into your GitHub account in VS Code. And now that we're logged in with our account, we have enabled all of the AI features in this amazing program. So let me close the welcome screen and let's actually close this entire VS Code window. And let's create a new empty folder. So you could do it on your computer's desktop or in any folder or directory that you want to that you can easily find. I think the desktop is easy just for quick access. So on my desktop, let's create a new folder. You could name it anything you want, but let's just name it funny example, or you don't need the dash, just funny example. Now what I want you to do is open this brand new empty folder with the VS Code program. So if you're on Mac, you can just drag this folder on top of the VS Code icon in your dock, or if you're on Windows, open up VS Code and then literally drag the folder icon on top of VS Code. When you do that, you'll see this one-time message that says, do you want to trust the authors of this file and folder? You do. In other words, we trust ourselves. We're the ones that just created that folder. So I'll click the trust the authors of all files on my desktop and click yes, I trust the authors. Okay, so now that we've created a folder, check this out. We can have AI create files and write code for us directly onto our hard drive. You can close the welcome screen right about here if you want to, but over in this right-hand sidebar, that's what we're interested in. Now you can chat with the AI. So right down here, you can see I can choose between, if I click on that, between agent, ask, or edit. We don't want to be limited to only chatting, which would be ask. So if you go into agent mode specifically, you can give the AI commands or instructions. So check this out. Do this with me. Say, now this has nothing to do with code, but let's just practice. Imagine we want to create a file in our brand new empty folder, and we want it to list 20 colors, like all in a row. So we'll just say, in my folder, create a file called colors.txt, and inside it include 20 different color names. And then go ahead and press enter. So it's working. It's already done. Cool. So it literally created, if you go look on your folder on your desktop, it created a file on my hard drive for me. And if I open up that file, drag that on the screen, there you have it. Now, this has nothing to do with coding. However, from here, I think you can already see how powerful this is. We can give the AI instructions and it can perform actions for us. So now, instead of just asking questions and copying and pasting, it's as if we have a coworker who is already a professional developer who we can not only ask for guidance, but we can have them perform actions for us. Now that is going to bring this lesson to a close. I don't want to include too much in each video. So in this video, we installed VS Code, we connected our github.com account, and we saw our first example of agentic AI. Let's keep our momentum rolling, and up next, let's start working with actual code instead of just a silly list of 20 colors. I'll see you in the next lesson. Hello everyone. In this lesson, we're going to answer the questions, what is the front end and what is the back end? So whether you've heard of those terms before or not, that's okay. That's what we're going to cover in this video. Because even though we're not going to type code out manually, we are trying to learn web development, and so we need to begin with the foundation of all of web development. So what is front end? What is back end? Let's just walk through a quick example. So imagine you pull up your phone or your laptop and you try to visit google.com. So your phone or your laptop, that is the client, and your web browser is going to send a request over to a server, right? So your device, your client is going out onto the internet, it's sending a request to a server, the server receives that request, and then it goes, okay, let me process this. What is the client asking for? Are they asking for the home page? Are they asking for the About Us page? And then the server, once it's done processing that, it sends back a response. And then it's the client's job to take that response and actually execute it and render it. From here, there's a million different questions you might have, but I think the most important question would be, what does the server send as its response? It sends a few things. Number 1, HTML. Number 2, CSS. And number 3, JavaScript. Now, in just a moment, we're going to get our hands dirty and use AI to create a basic web page for us. So we don't need to memorize the syntax for these languages right now. The only thing I want to focus on this slide is that these languages, these 3 languages, these are not opinions. It's not an option. This is the HTML is the only language that web browsers, so like Google Chrome, use to spell out the content on a web page. CSS is the only language that Google Chrome or web browsers in general use to style or decorate or design the web page. And then JavaScript is the only language that web browsers use to add interactivity or logic. This whole concept of those things not being an opinion, that's okay if it doesn't make sense right now. I promise by the end of this short video, that will make sense. So the key here is that these 3 languages, these are the front end. So just to look back a little bit for context, those 3 languages, those run on the client. So the server is sending that code to your client, and then the client has to actually run the code and make sense of it. Now, for you and I to make sense of everything we're blabbling on about, let's get our hands dirty. Let's run a quick demo. Anyways, do this with me. Why don't we create a brand new folder on our desktop, brand new empty folder, and why don't we name it Simple Silly Example. Cool, now go ahead and open up this folder with VS Code. You can go ahead and close your welcome screen or welcome tab. I'm actually going to uncheck this box that says show the welcome page on startup. Cool. Now over in the right-hand menu, and remember if you don't see this, you can use this icon to toggle it. Let's ask the AI, and again, let's be in agent mode. Let's ask the AI to build a little web page for us. So type this prompt in with me. Let's say create an index.html file that welcomes the user to my homepage. New sentence. Let's say the user can click on links that take them to the about page or the history page, and create corresponding, it's okay if you have a typo, AI will know what we mean, corresponding about.html and history.html pages with example content, and make sure they link back to the home page. Let's go ahead and press enter. So basically I'm asking for a very basic website with 3 pages that link back and forth, right? A home page, an about page, and a history page. Cool, so it looks like it's done. Now let me show you how you can preview these. With your web browser open, just drag that file on your computer's hard drive on top of your browser window. So for example, if I go into Simple Silly Example, cool, here are the 3 files that the AI created for me. Index is your home page. So let's just drag that on top of my web browser. Whoops, google.com thought I was trying to upload that file. Let's actually open a new tab screen like this and then drag your index.html file on top of your browser. Okay, we see welcome to my homepage. Thanks for visiting. Feel free to explore, and I can click on about. It takes me to the About Us page. I can click back to the homepage. I can click on history. Cool, I can click back to the homepage. Now let's talk about what's going on from a client to server perspective. So when we first load the homepage, that is the client sending a request to the server, and then the server has to process, okay, are they asking for the homepage, the about page, the history page? It sees what we're requesting. It processes what it should send as its response. The client gets that code. So in this case, it's HTML. And then it has to render it or make it look like a web page. Now, what do I mean by render it? Well, back in VS Code, if you look at index.html, your code will be a bit different than mine. That's just the nature of AI. But if you look for something that you recognize, like where it says welcome to my homepage, and then you look for that in index.html, you'll see that it's wrapped, in my case, it's wrapped in an H1 sandwich, which means that this is a very important headline. But there we see that text, right? Welcome to my homepage. Then below that, we see a P element or a P sandwich, like an opening P tag, a bit of content, the closing P tag, right? And that's this content. And then down here, we have the links to the about page and the history page. Now, you don't need to understand this code right now. I mean, over time as a web developer, trust me, you will understand this code. But the beauty of AI is that at this moment in time, all you need to know is that this is HTML code. And these different bits of bread are the sandwiches, like if this is a heading level 1 sandwich, this is a paragraph sandwich, This is a bulleted list sandwich. These different types of elements give the browser semantic meaning on how they should render the content. So the browser knows that if you wrap something in an H1, it should look like this. Or if it's a paragraph, it should look like this. Or an A element stands for anchor, in other words, a link. It should look like this. Right? It's blue and you can click on it, and when you hover over it, your mouse cursor changes. So to recap, the server is sending over this content to the browser, and then it's the browser's job to turn what would otherwise just look like code into a usable experience. Now that's HTML. What we've been looking at right here, what I'm selecting, that's HTML. Now let's look really quick at CSS. So let's open up our AI chat window and just tell the agent, great, now use CSS to make my pages beautiful. That's it. That's very open-ended, but let's just leave it at that. Let's press enter and see what the agent does. Okay, it says I'll add a modern, visually appealing CSS style sheet. It's working, it's working. Okay, it looks like it's done. Now if I go back to the browser and click the refresh icon, great. Now whether or not you would consider this beautiful, that's subjective, but it definitely has some styling to it, right? Whereas before it looked very plain or default. Now again, as you grow as a web developer, you can understand CSS code, but right now that's not important. But just to let you know, if you go into your new style.css file, this file is responsible for spelling out the colors, the size, the spacing. So far we know that HTML is how you spell out the raw content. Like, is something a heading? Is it a paragraph? Is it a link? And then CSS is how you decorate or style the content. Those are two of the big three languages. The third language is JavaScript. In just a moment, we'll use AI to create a really fun JavaScript example. But before we jump into that, I just want to make this abundantly clear. So when I click on About, my client or my browser is sending a request to the server. The server looks at which page I'm requesting. It sees, oh, you're requesting the About page. So it sends back as its response the HTML for this page. When I click back to the home page, that is a request for the home page. The server responds accordingly. If I click on history, that is a request to the server for that page. The server responds back with the appropriate content. Cool, so that's simple enough. Request, response, request, response. And other than that, we've learned that HTML spells out the raw content and CSS decorates it. Beautiful. Now, in just a few moments from now, we'll explain what servers really need to do in order for anything meaningful to happen. But before we get to that, let's cover the third and final technology that the front end is responsible for running or rendering or executing. Right, and that is JavaScript. Right, so far we've seen HTML and CSS in action. Now let's see JavaScript in action. For this JavaScript example, I'm actually going to close this VS Code instance, and on my desktop, create a brand new folder, and let's call it Math Game. And then go ahead and open up the Math Game folder with VS Code. Beautiful. In the AI prompt area, let's type this in and make sure it's on agent mode. Create an index.html file in my folder that uses JavaScript to ask users simple multiple choice math questions, comma, like what is 2 plus, helps if you can type, 2 plus 2, or what is 5 plus 3, and keep track of how many correct answers they've made. If they've made 5 correct answers, show them a happy message congratulating them. Perfect. Go ahead and press enter. It's working, it's working. This is a bit more of a complex prompt than our previous one, so it might take a little bit of time here. It looks like mine is finished. So now in that new folder on my desktop, if you open it up, here I see index.html. So just in your web browser, just drag that new file on top of your web browser. All right, let's give this a try. So we see math quiz. Now yours will look different than mine. That's just the randomness of AI. But I see score 0 out of 5. So what is 6 plus 4? I click on 2. It says correct. Let me just beat the game really quick. Let me get 5 answers correct here. So 5. I want to see the congratulations message. Okay, I just need one more. Let's see. Do I get a Boom. Congratulations. Now, what is the meaning of all of this? What is the point of this? It's to illustrate that JavaScript powered this entire game. JavaScript came up with the random questions. It knows the correct answer. It kept track of how many answers I've answered correctly. It's handling, showing me the different parts of the user interface at the appropriate time. All of that is happening with JavaScript. Now, what does that mean? It means that all of that decision making is happening on the client side. And this is the entire point of this video. This is why this is the first thing we're covering in this course, because you need to understand the difference between code running on the browser in the client versus code running on a server somewhere. Let me show you why this is so important. So if you refresh this page, it's obviously going to let you start the game over again. Now check this out. If we go into VS Code, your code is going to be different than mine, but watch how quickly, if I was a bad person or a malicious person or a lazy person, I'm just going to scroll through this code, and towards the bottom there should be JavaScript. Yes. Now this is only the third video in the course, so I don't expect you to be able to look at the JavaScript and make sense of it, but as an experienced developer, I can immediately see that I could just go into my dev tools and say score equals 100. And now if I get even just one question right from here, it says my score is 101 out of 5 and congratulations. Or better yet, if I refresh in my browser's console, I could literally just say show congratulations. If I just run that function, boom, you see it programmatically shows me the congrats screen. So what is the point of all of this? It's to drive home the point that this code is running on the client side. Your web browser is executing this code. And anytime code is executing on the client side, we as developers cannot trust it. You saw how easy it was for a malicious user to cheat this game. Anytime the browser is responsible for rendering or executing content, we can't trust the result. So for innocent tools like converting Celsius to Fahrenheit or a simple enough math game, that's fine. But for anything with real world consequences, all of your logic needs to take place on the server side. The server is a trusted environment where only the owners of the product can access it. Anyways, the point here is that JavaScript is incredibly powerful. You can use JavaScript to create entire video games right here in the browser. The browser is capable of so many dynamic, powerful things because of JavaScript. But from the very beginning in this course, we need to be aware that that is happening on the client side. So let's take things full circle and get back to these slides here. These are the three big languages that the web browser uses to create the user experience that people can see and they can click on and they can interact with. We've had some fun building a couple examples, but now the question becomes, well, what's missing? Because sure, we can build, Celsius to Fahrenheit converters or simple little math games, but how do we do anything of real world substance? Or how do we let our server do something other than just serving up, static HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? So that's what these two bulleted points on screen are talking about now, right? It's that our server isn't verifying the answers of that math game. So a malicious user could set their score to 999, so on and so forth. So what's missing is a server that is actually receiving our input and validating it and looking at it and analyzing it and either accepting it or rejecting it or trying to correct us or only letting things happen if it determines, that the logic makes sense. So what's missing, if we go all the way back to this diagram, what's missing is when it's the server's chance to think about its response, we don't want it to only send back static HTML, CSS, and JavaScript as its response. Instead, we want the server to be able to look like, I don't know, is this the username's correct, username and password? Are they the owner of this bank account? Can they withdraw money? Like, we need the server to actually, check permissions and look at the incoming data. Like if the user fills out a form, like look at the data they've submitted. Because up until now, in our little silly examples in this course, we've just been having the server send over, static HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So to get back to where we were, what's missing? The server needs to actually do something. That's what's missing. Now, what types of things does a server do before it sends its response? It can look at user-submitted form data. It can sanitize and validate that data because we can't truly trust it. It can enforce business logic, rules, comparisons, checks, decisions, right? So a lot of those things that the math game was doing on the client side, we could have been doing those things on the server side if, not being able to cheat that math game was truly important. Servers also can store data in a database or retrieve data from a database. They can guard against malicious user intent. They can permanently store user-uploaded files. So many different things, right? So almost anything that's truly meaningful outside of just your device, we're going to need a server to accomplish it, right? Letting users register and log in and log out, all of that. We need a server. Now, highlighted down here, we have the million-dollar question. Which language do we need to use to accomplish these things? Right, because back on this slide, we've seen that these are the three languages that the client side uses. The client renders these three languages, but which language do we use on the server side in order to do those dynamic server actions, right? And what is the answer to this million-dollar question? Well, it's that this has to be our first opinion. And this is what I meant earlier when I said that HTML is not an opinion, CSS is not an opinion, JavaScript is not an opinion. Those are the only available languages that the browser uses to do those client-side things like rendering a user interface. When it comes to the server side and validating data and processing data and sending back a dynamic response, there are almost too many options, and you have to have an opinion. You have to choose one. There is no unopinionated option. You must choose one. So there's Node, Python, Java, Go, PHP, C#, Ruby, and 100 others or 500 others. And this is where things get a little bit tricky. Because as an absolute beginner, sometimes you don't want to have to make an opinion. You want sort of the most standard option. However, when it comes to the server side in web development, we must choose one. So as the instructor of this course, which one am I going to choose for us? Well, I'm not going to defend my opinion right now in this video. I will throughout the entirety of the course, but we're going to go with PHP. Now, you could get into a 30-hour argument as to, why didn't you choose this one or this one or this one, any of them, right? Those are good arguments to have. Those are good debates to have, but that can come later. Right now, at this point in your journey, all you need to know is that you can't start to work with the back end or the server without choosing a back end language. Without going into too much detail right now, I can just tell you I've chosen PHP for us because I think it's going to let us have the most fun with the least amount of intimidation, fear, or frustration. In my opinion, PHP is the closest to not having an opinion to this question. In my opinion, it is the most basic option. So, up next, what are we going to work on? Well, the question is, how do we set up a sandbox where we can safely and privately experiment with a server or a backend for free on our computer? Because once we set that up on our computer, the sky is the limit. We can start using AI to build the front end and the back end. And at that point, we can start working on building something truly meaningful, right? Like a real world application. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's keep things rolling, and I'll see you then. Hello, everyone. This is a very quick video where I want to address the potential frustration of typing out really long prompts with me. Because I'm well aware you're trying to use your brain's horsepower on understanding all of the new concepts we're talking about in these prompts, so it can be difficult and frustrating to type along with me, right? You might find yourself having to pause the video a lot and type along with me and keep up. And instead of doing that, I want to let you know that in the resources for these lessons, it might be available as a downloadable attachment, or there might just be a video with prompts for the entire course. But I'm letting you know I will include prompts in text format that you can either copy and paste, or you can pause the video and then have a real text prompt that you can reference. Because throughout this course, we're going to build an entire application just through writing prompts. And so I want to help alleviate some of that frustration of pausing the video, typing it in with me, pausing a little bit further, so on and so forth. So just know you don't need to do that. I mean, if you learn well that way, absolutely you can type in with me. But if you would prefer to, just know that there will be copy and pastable or, a real permanent text format that you can look at and reference at your own pace. Let's keep things rolling, and I'll see you in the next lesson.